I am very pleased tonight to introduce the recipient of this year's Paul Tsongas Economic Patriot Award, Senator Kent Conrad of North Dakota. Senator Conrad is a fifth-generation North Dakotan. He was first elected to the Senate in 1986, and the people of North Dakota have sent him back to Washington 4 more times since then. He is a graduate of Stanford University and an MBA from George Washington University. In 2006, Time magazine ranked Senator Conrad as one of America's 10 best senators. Earlier this year, the Hill newspaper listed him as one of the hardest working lawmakers on Capitol Hill. Importantly to the Concord Coalition, as the chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, Senator Conrad has led the fight in the Senate for fiscal responsibility. He has demonstrated a tireless commitment to raising awareness of the threat posed by the nation's exploding debt. He is not only a true deficit hawk, but a true patriot. In 2007, Chairman Conrad combined with Senator Judd Gregg, ranking Republican on the Budget Committee, proposed legislation to create a bipartisan commission to address the nation's long-term fiscal imbalance. Their legislation became the driving force and the basis for the creation of the President's Bipartisan Fiscal Commission, which is scheduled to report early next month. Senator Conrad now serves as a member of the commission, and he is one of the bipartisan leaders of the commission's tax reform working group. Throughout his career, Senator Conrad has exemplified the spirit of bipartisanship and a commitment to fiscal and generational responsibility. And it is for that the Concord Coalition recognizes him with the Paul Tsongas Economic Patriot Award. Please join me in welcoming Economic Patriot Senator Kent Conrad.
Let me give you the award, and then you can move in front and present him the award. Why don't you move in front, and I'll give you... Can you move in front of the podium? You want me out of the picture?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Peter. Thank you all. It was a bit of a struggle to get here. They have an issue with the gates at the airport parking lot. There are now about 50 cars stacked up waiting to find egress. I'm delighted that we were number 3 in line, or we certainly would not have made it. Thank you for this singular honor. I think back on my now 24 years in the United States Senate, and this, I must say, is one of my proudest moments. So thank you. Thank you all for this recognition. Before I go further, I want to introduce my daughter, Jessie, who is here. She is getting a PhD at Columbia in art history. So if any of you need your art reviewed, I'm sure she'd be able to accommodate you. It's wonderful to have my daughter here with me tonight. My daughter, Jessamine Conrad. Thank you, Peter, for your leadership, not only of the Concord Coalition, but the dedication of the Peterson Foundation to alerting our country to the debt threat. You have done a remarkable job, and we deeply appreciate your commitment. Pete Peterson, thank you. And my good pal, Bob Kerrey, who I served with in the United States Senate, who sat right behind me in the United States Senate. By the way, Bob is one of the most gifted cartoonists in America. If you've never seen a Kerrey cartoon, you want to be sure to implore him to show you some of his work, because he's really remarkably gifted. And when you're in the United States Senate in those long nights, it's what we call a target-rich environment. And Bob Rubin, who I believe will go down in history as perhaps the most important Secretary of the Treasury that we have had other than Alexander Hamilton. Thank you, Bob, for all of the leadership you've provided this country. One of my favorite stories was in the '93 negotiations on the deficit reduction package. One of my staff members was in an elevator with two of the leading House negotiators. And somehow they got on the subject of Kent Conrad. And one of the House chairmen said to the other, well, he's just a Rubin acolyte. I always thought it was high praise. A Rubin acolyte. And David Walker, thank you. David, you have sounded the alarm all across America, and we are deeply in your debt. David Walker, thank you. People in this room are people that I deeply admire and appreciate for the leadership you've provided our country. This is a defining moment. I've just come from another meeting of the President's Commission. We spent the afternoon talking about domestic discretionary spending. Tomorrow we're talking revenue and mandatory spending. And as you can imagine, the deliberations are contentious and difficult. But I must say, for the first time this afternoon, I felt hopeful about possibly finding a way to get 14 votes. It would be a remarkable accomplishment if we were able to do it. Let me just be clear, this is not easy. I don't think I've ever been part of a more difficult negotiation than this one. But let me just say quickly, we are borrowing 40 cents of every dollar that we spend in this country. That cannot continue much longer. We are on a course now, the Congressional Budget Office tells us, that if we stay on the current trend line, we will reach a debt 400% of the gross domestic product of the United States. As we discussed today, Pete, here we are. We have the highest spending as a share of our economy in 60 years. We have the lowest revenue as a share of our economy in 60 years. Those on the left who say you don't have to touch entitlements, I believe are in deep denial. Those on the right who say you don't have to touch revenue, I believe are in deep denial. When you have a hole as big as this one, you have to work both sides of the equation. But we have to work them in a way that improves the competitive position of the United States. If we fail in that challenge, our nation will be condemned to second-class status. I know, Bob, I remember very well your conversation some months ago when you'd come back from China and called me at home to tell me that top Chinese leadership had taken Secretary Rubin aside and told them they have concluded that we do not have the political will to deal with the debt threat. I very much hope that we are able to prove them wrong. If we are, it will be in no small part because of the leadership of the people in this room. So let me just say to you, I believe everybody in this room is an economic patriot, and we owe you our thanks. Thank you very